Hey everyone, welcome into the DFS Den. It's Dave Eddy here, aka Corporal Eddy on Twitter. Hope you've been following along the last few weeks. I've been on a little bit of a run. I wouldn't say anything too crazy. Definitely haven't won any life-changing money, but been making a very reasonable ROI the past few weeks here. So I hope you've been enjoying along with me, and I'm looking to do it again here for you in week 6. With that in mind, let's go ahead and start with the quarterbacks. We always start with cash. And I'm looking here, Josh Allen, going up against the Chiefs, everyone's most popular game of the week. He's sitting at 8.2K on DraftKings. Now, week in and week out, he's got the highest ceiling on the slate, which always makes him, an option in cash because he's also got one of the highest, if not the highest, floors as well. So I think in cash, you pretty much just lock Josh Allen this week and move on. MME may be a little bit of a different story, but for cash, I'm not sure that any other play makes as much sense. Now, if you do want to pay down, I'm going to give you Geno Smith going up against Arizona. Comes in 5.7K, so $2,500 more to play around with. I think, he's your pay down option, and what's a pretty juicy matchup there against the Cardinals. But as it sits right now, I think those are the two people that I would consider. But again, I'm playing Josh Allen. When we get to MME, I like to go right down salary-wise. So we start right at the top. Again, just talked about him, Josh Allen, 8.2K again. Having serious thoughts here about fading Allen and MME, and not because, he's not the player, that doesn't have the highest ceiling, because usually that's what you're chasing in MME is you're chasing ceiling, but sometimes game theory really has to take over. And I just think it's going to be hard to take down a tournament with a stack from the KC Buffalo game just because they're going to be so heavily played. So I think that fading Allen strictly as a leverage play really is where I'm leaning this week. Now, it doesn't mean that that's what I'm going to do, but I feel like that's kind of where my head's at right now. Lamar Jackson going up against the Giants, 8.1K. Similar projection to Josh Allen. Granted, not quite as good, but he's going to come in with a third the ownership. He's $100 cheaper, so it's not a salary thing. It would just simply be a pivot off of, the Josh Allen chalk. The targets are pretty condensed there in Baltimore, so makes it pretty easy to stack. And the run back, fairly obvious with Barkley as well. Kind of think that the game is actually a little bit more interesting stack-wise if Bateman isn't playing, just because I like the idea of Andrews, obviously, but I also like paying down for Duvernay instead of playing Bateman. But if Bateman's in the game, I'm not really so confident with playing Duvernay. So it's kind of an odd situation where I prefer that the wide receiver one is out, even though technically I guess Mark Andrews would be their, top pass catcher. But anywho, moving on here, Patrick Mahomes going up against Buffalo, 8K. So all three of those guys are pretty much the same price. Again, we come back to this game. Now, if you truly think that the Bills and Chargers game is going to be close and is going to be a shootout, then the reality is I think Mahomes makes more sense than Allen as far as where to go in MME. I personally think that if you, I personally think that you play Allen, if you think it's a high scoring game, but if it's going to be close and high scoring, then you can get Mahomes at about a fifth of the ownership. And that's crazy to me to think that there's probably going to be such a gap, but at the same time, it does make more sense. While Mahomes and Allen may be fairly equally talented, the supporting cast that Allen has is far superior at this point, and it's much more condensed. And so those are really, the pros to Allen, and those are the reason why he's going to be more expensive. But, again, if you think it's close and high scoring, Mahomes has to be a consideration. It's just a matter of trying to nail the stack. You either have to play a whole lot of them so that you can hit all the different combinations, or you just have to get it right, which is going to be pretty hard to do. Kyler Murray going up against Seattle comes in 7.3K. Cardinals have the second highest team total. this game, that they're in has the second highest over under as well. So, I mean, it's definitely a game that, if it wasn't for the KC Buffalo game, would be significantly more popular. But obviously, that's not the world we live in. There's definitely a path here for Kyler breaking the slate this week. But to be honest, it's just kind of hard to trust him. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do there yet. I'm almost surely going to play one of Murray or Geno Smith. We'll talk about Geno here in a bit, but definitely interested in playing one of those two guys. Tom Brady going up against the Steelers at 6.3K. Same thing as last week here. Brady's got all of his weapons, which makes him very intriguing at his price. He's a little bit higher than last week, but I mean, roughly the same price here, $300 difference on DK. Problem is that, for me with Brady, a ceiling game from him isn't really going to help you in MME so long as any of the guys I've already mentioned also have a ceiling game. He's not going to put up as many points in the ceiling game as any one of those other guys is going to. And even though he is, quite a bit cheaper, it's not cheap enough for the difference between their ceiling. So, Brady's certainly an option. I don't think I'm going to be playing him in MME, but I can't fault anyone who does. And then lastly, I mentioned earlier, Geno Smith going up against the Cardinals in that game, 5.7K. The theory here is very much the same as the Kyler play. Game has second highest over under. Geno's going to be a lot more popular than Kyler though because of his price. But you're playing him with Lockett, you're playing him at Metcalf. Those are very obvious. No one else is worthy of consideration there in the passing game. Kenneth Walker makes it interesting. You could onslaught that game with all three of them. You could pick or choose your receiver and put it with Kenneth Walker. You could double stack it. You could single. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could go about it here. But just know that if you play Geno, he's going to be more popular if that's a game that you're looking to attack as opposed to, Kyler Murray. So all plays there are viable this week. It's a lot of options for you. This week, even though it's a smaller slate than usual due to the bye week. But let's get into running backs here. Cash. We'll start right at the top with a guy that I'm locking into my cash lineups this week. Ramondre Stevenson going up against the Browns. He's 6K. Damian Harris got hurt last week, and Stevenson led all running backs in snap percentage. It was like almost 90%. So no reason to think that that's not going to happen again this week. And he goes up against the Browns defense that's giving up the most points to running backs this year. So just an absolute smash spot. In cash, I'm locking him in. Saquon Barkley going up against Baltimore comes in 7.7K. Barkley pretty much is the offense for the Giants. He's obviously their number one running back, but he's also the best option in the passing game right now. They don't have very good options in the passing game, and they don't have healthy options in the passing game, even if they were healthy. So, Saquon's going to get just a ton of volume here. And I won't say he's a lock just because there are so many cheap running back options this week. But Barkley should definitely be a very strong consideration for your cash lineups. Leonard Fournette going up against the Steelers at 7.4K. Now, you would think that the Bucs are going to have their way with Pittsburgh this week, leading to, Lenny getting a lot of touches. But thought the exact same thing last week against Atlanta, and that was a close game. And if not for a interesting roughing the passer call, may have been one that they could have very well lost. So, we don't quite know, I guess is the way to put that. But listen, even with that game last week, Lenny still got his and then some because he was so involved in the passing game. So regardless of kind of how this one plays out, you would expect that, Fournette's going to be involved enough that makes for a very strong cash play. Alvin Kamara going up against the Bengals at 6.7K on DK. So this one gets a little bit scary because the Saints could be without all of their other offensive weapons. So that means to me that one of two things. Either A, Kamara is going to get as many touches as he can handle, or it means that the Bengals are going to just try to take him out of the game and dare anybody else to beat them. So definitely an interesting situation. Might be a little bit too risky for me in cash, but when we talk about MME, I think I'm a little bit more interested there. And then Kenneth Walker going up against the Cardinals, coming in at 5.4K with Rashad Penny out. It's expected that it's going to be the Kenneth Walker show there, and I think that it should be. Now, whether it is or not, we'll see. But at this price, this expected volume, it's going to be hard to get around playing him in cash. I'm not going to mark him as a lock right now, but probably gets to that point. My only real worry is that I think DJ Dallas is going to get way more run than we expect. Even if that happens, I still think that the volume here is just too great. Well, I should say the value is too great because he still should receive decent volume no matter here. We talk MME. We're going to work down from highest lowest price wise. I'm only going to cover a couple of these guys here. But we talked about him already. So not going to, beat a dead horse here. Saquon Barkley, again, 7.7K against Baltimore. His price isn't bad. Like I say, he's pretty much the entire offense. He's going to be extremely chalky, not the chalk of the week. We'll get to that. But the volume is undeniable, so definitely makes for a solid MME play. And then Kamara, again, I think I like him here more in MME than I do cash because I could see a boomer bust kind of game from him. And I don't really want that in cash. Granted, it'd be nice to get the boom, but the bust would be pretty terrible whenever there's a bunch of cheaper options. But similar to Barkley, I think just as far as he might be the entire offense this week, he's going to be cheaper and he's going to be lower owned, and those things mean a lot more to me in MME. And then Ramondre Stevenson, again, 6K on DK, going to be so highly owned that, fading him just might be the prudent play, probably in the long run, fading any player, but especially a running back when there's other options that might exceed 30% in MME, probably in the long run is a right move. But man, he's just such a good play this week. Really hard to get away from, all the expected volume here, in this smash spot. So you got to figure out what you want to do there. Let's move on over to wide receivers. Of course, we'll go cash. Tyler Lockett going up against the Cardinals. We keep talking about the same games over and over again, don't we? Buffalo, KC, Arizona, Seattle. So he's only 5.6K this week, severely underpriced for his production this year and for his matchup. Now, DK Lockett could have a big day here as well, but at the price of Lockett, I think that I'm just going to lock him in here for cash. Stephon Diggs going up against the Chiefs, 8.4K. Going to be hard to afford him, especially if you're going to pair him with Allen. Going to be hard to do in cash. I think he's in play, though, with the game environment. I just am not sure if you're going to be able to pay up and afford him while still, having a good enough roster that you're going to want to play in cash. Rondell Moore, again, Seattle matchup here. It's only 4.2K. Now, his price, along with his PPR specific value, makes him a pretty obvious target in cash. I don't quite know if I want to go there yet or not. But at his price, he's definitely someone that I'm going to keep in mind. If I need the savings, I won't hesitate to go to him, but I don't know if I start off looking there. Jacoby Myers going up against the Browns comes in at 5.3K. Now, assuming he's healthy, assuming he plays, he is a really good cash option. Just the fact, his target share is 4th highest in the league. That alone puts him into consideration. But his price is really quite reasonable here as well. Again, 5.3K makes him a very strong cash consideration. Problem for me is, on a Patriots team in a game that I'm not sure is going to be very high scoring, would be kind of hard to play, 2 Patriots. So the fact that I'm playing Stevenson already makes it really hard to play Jacoby Myers here, but it's certainly an option. So I'm not saying I won't do it, but that's my biggest concern is playing the both of them together. Now, MME, let me have a quick drink here. So MME with the wide receivers. I'm looking at you, Justin Jefferson. Going up against the Dolphins, he's at 8.9K, very expensive, but I think he's going to go under-owned, and I think that price has got a lot to do with it. And he's got very obvious secondary stacking partners. You got Tyreek Hill. You got Jalen Waddle. Again, though, the the problem, the issue here is going to be affording Jefferson and either one of those guys. Now, if you're fading Josh Allen and you're at least paying down a little bit at quarterback, you definitely can make it work considering, all of the cheap running back options this week. But a Justin Jefferson and Hill or Waddle secondary stack, one of my favorite plays this week. Hollywood Brown going against Seattle, 7.2K, which is a little bit cheaper, but the price is completely justified. Very easy stacking partner here with Kyler, or as a run back with Geno. Definitely the most targeted player in that offense. Last week, we're going to get him without DeAndre Hopkins as well. Seattle has been getting lit up in the air, so I could definitely see a path to Hollywood breaking the slate. I mean, the potential is there, and I honestly think he's going to go a little bit under-owned. So the fact that he's going to go under-owned, I think, actually makes me more interested in Kyler and in Geno game stacks as well. Speaking of Kyler and Geno game stacks, Tyler Lockett going up against, that Cardinals team, 5.6K. Talked about him as a cash lock for me. It's going to be super chalky this week, but man, it's going to be hard for me to get off of him. A lot of times leverage is just simply by, pivoting, going to a different player. In this case, I actually think I may just be overweight on him as my attempt to gain leverage on the chalk just by, playing much more of him than others. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but man, really liking this Seattle and Cardinals game a lot this week. Let's talk about DJ Moore going up against the Rams, 5.1K. It's a tough play, and he's going to be catching balls, or hopefully catching balls at least, from PJ Walker. This is going to be in their first game without Matt Rule, so who knows exactly what this offense is going to look like. Kind of would lead me more to think that they're going to rely on their studs, which is CMC and, DJ Moore. But listen, this play, I think because it's so uncomfortable, it does make it interesting leverage. At this price range, I don't think a lot of people are going to be playing receivers. I think they're going to be paying up at receiver because they can pay down at running back. But in this range, I think it makes you unique, in a few different ways. Devin Duvernay going up against the Giants, 4.7K. Kind of talked about him a little bit when I talked about Lamar. I mean, call me crazy, but I think he looked a little bit like Debo last week. He had some Debo-ish qualities. Lamar stacks are going to be a way that you can already get unique. And, Duvernay with Andrews, or just Duvernay in place of Andrews, adds an extra layer of uniqueness. Again, assuming that Bateman is out. And then we talked about him earlier, Rondell Moore going up against Seattle, 4.2K on DK. All the same reasons that he's a cash option makes him at least in play for MME. His price, his game environment are going to make him very popular. So, I do prefer Hollywood, who is 3K more. And I think that his, 3K difference is what does differentiate what the ownership is going to be. But I'm not opposed to Rondell. I just strongly prefer, Hollywood this week at least. So let's go ahead and move on to tight ends. And of course, we start again with cash. Travis Kelce makes for a pretty obvious play here going up against Buffalo. Coming off a big 4 touchdown performance, even though yardage wise he didn't get much, but didn't need to. Going to be hard to afford him in cash. But him and Andrews are the obvious top 2 plays at tight end. Speaking of it, Mark Andrews against the Giants, 7K. His price, just like Kelce, makes him prohibitive in cash. But, I mean, he's doable with the cheap running back options. Don't know that I'm going to be able to get up to them this week, but we'll see. Again, no doubt that him and Kelce, top 2 plays at tight end. We get into some more viable plays here, I think, just because they're so much cheaper. Irv Smith going up against the Dolphins comes in at 3.2K. I almost always pay down at tight end. And, 3.2 isn't necessarily a major pay down. It's not a total punt here, but it's more than half the cost, of Andrews. And, this guy's a solid play. So I don't mind, potentially getting even a 0 from a tight end if I'm paying down. Now, I wouldn't want that from Smith because I am paying the bare minimum here. I am paying up a smidge, but we'll get to that theory here at my last guy. But Hayden Hurst is another guy I'm interested in going up against the Saints. Only $100 more than Irv Smith, so it comes in at 3.3K on DK. I think he's got a higher ceiling than Irv Smith, but he comes with an injury concern. So, you got to take that into consideration. The $100 difference isn't anything really. The higher ceiling is great, but the injury concern means what exactly are you going to get from him? So, I lean Hayden Hurst just because I do like the ceiling, but I don't know whose floor would be higher in this case. So I definitely keep him on your radar. If he comes into the week on Sunday fully healthy, there's no injury concerns, then it's an obvious push for me towards Hurst over Smith. But the last guy I want to talk about, I just want to get him on your radar. Zach Gentry going up against the Bucks, 2.6K, so he is a punt here for you. It would be your full punt tight end if Pat Freiermuth does not play. If Freiermuth plays, obviously, Gentry, my Michigan guy here, no longer is a consideration. But this would be a situation of a guy where, he does have a zero floor. But, punting at a tight end, the savings that provides you, even if I think a guy has a zero floor, I still think that it makes him worthy of consideration. So I wouldn't not play a tight end just because, their floor is that of a zero in cash. I'm willing to take that risk for the salary savings. Let's get to MME here for tight ends. We're going to talk about some of the same guys here, especially right at the top. Kelsey and Andrews, always, MME considerations for me. With Kelsey especially, he's very much in play for any of your Allen or any of your Mahomes stacks. Makes a great stacking partner with Mahomes, a great run back with Allen. He's actually going to be less chalky, I think, than Andrews is going to be. But I also think he's got a higher ceiling. $800 difference does have something to do with, it here for me. I think that's why he's going to be less chalky than Andrews is going to be, but definitely in play. And same thing with Andrews, probably Lamar's number one target again this week. So, he's probably a must for me if I'm playing Lamar. I'm almost surely going to stack him with Andrews and then decide what I want to do with Duvernay or not. Probably out on Bateman even if he does play, but really is hard to play either one of these guys if they're not part of a game stack. Might make it impossible to play them. And I don't know if you want to play them as one-offs. Well, I don't know if you want to play Kelsey as a one-off. Andrews maybe. Zach Ertz comes in 4.9K on DK this week, going up against Seattle. Again, keep talking about the same two games here. I hate playing MME tight ends in the 4K range. Just doesn't usually seem to work out that well. It's just an odd price. I prefer either to pay all the way up or pay all the way down. But it's hard to argue with his volume this week. So reluctantly, he's a guy that is in consideration for me. Obviously, he's well in consideration as far as Kyler or Geno, game stacks. But as a one-off play, I probably would just avoid him. I'm okay with thinking outside the box here a little bit, getting kind of funky with Noah Gray. Comes in at 2.9K. Extreme leverage, that allows you to pay down at tight end. So makes you unique and saves you money. I'm not a big fan of a potential zero, though, in MME at any position. So very risky play here, but definitely could pay off for you. And the pay down options in MME are next to none. So something to at least keep in mind. And then we go with the guy that was, the popular play last week, Cade Otton, going up against Pittsburgh, 2.9K. So a little more expensive than he was last week, but still very reasonably priced. Not going to be as popular as he was last week, but if Braid is out again, he really becomes the exact same play that he was. He was super popular last week. He's probably not going to get there this week. I guess to some extent he becomes a little bit of old news, even though he's really, not. He's still, he's just a rookie in his second game with the potential of being, really involved in the offense. But if you really think about it, the difference between this week and last week would be next to none if Braid is out. So definitely a pay down option for me this week. And then lastly, we finish it off with everyone's favorite, the defense. We're going to make this pretty quick here this week because for cash, I like the Panthers going up against the Rams, 2.4K, which makes them the cheapest option this week. And listen, as much as I like paying down at tight end, I even more like paying down at, defense. Panthers are the best value, and they're the cheapest option. So I don't really think there's much reason to overthink it here. Now, if you do want to get a little bit different, I will suggest the Bills. They're coming in at only 2.7K, arguably the best defense in real life. And I think people they're going to be pretty popular, but if they shy away from the Bills, it's obviously going to be because they expect the game to be high scoring. And I'm here to tell you that a high scoring game doesn't necessarily mean that you need to avoid a defense and special teams. It's interceptions and sacks. That's where you get your points from. So yeah, you don't want them giving up a lot of points, obviously, but if the game's high scoring, you're probably going to see a lot of passing, which just opens up for more interceptions and more sacks. So I'm going to be playing the Panthers in cash, but at this point, or at this price, I think the Bills are certainly an option. And then let's talk about MME, okay? Listen, I'm probably going to avoid the Panthers in MME. I usually avoid my cash defense because I'm usually playing the most popular defense in cash, which means I'm just avoiding them in MME. They're so volatile that there's really no sense in usually playing, the popular defense in MME. There's really no great plays for defense this week. So quite simply, what I'm going to be doing and what I suggest that you do for your defense this week, simply pair it with one of your running backs. It's going to help spread out your exposure to, a variety of, different defenses, but it also helps to correlate it, even better with your lineup. So I think that this is definitely a week where I just simply am going to look to correlate that defense with a running back on my team. So hope that was helpful for you this week. Hopefully we continue onward with another profitable week. If you haven't done so yet, I need you to pop on over here, subscribe to the channel. You can turn on the notifications so you get an alert every time a new video comes out. And we'll just keep on rolling along here in week 6. I wish you the best of luck, and we'll see you next week.